This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Pay my rent, now my pocket got a dent. My light bill is 800 plus. I ain't got a cent. Hit the gas station, miss. Full up with this dollar. The pump attendant laugh. Don't make me holler. On a ride pump one, she only could pump a quarter of a gallon. Cause right now, it is so tough on the island. Even cooking gas gone up, so you know we ain't smiling. My capital could be Andres and it's small like Brylan.
Is living in the hands of the finance man. He is living in the hands of the finance man.
Violence sky high, ain't no one died.
Good yawning this morning and welcome back to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, your station for fresh news, smart talk all day. It is Tuesday, the 14th of June, 2022, and you're on the clock with Erin Greene. On the clock, we engage organizations, institutions, social and cultural leaders, and ordinary people to better understand the impact of public policy, private sector development, and emerging social and consumer trends. On the clock, we have conversations that help us understand and navigate a rapidly changing Bahamas. It is Tuesday, the 14th of June, 2022, and it's an exciting day. Yesterday, I told you what we're going to do today with the show, and we're right on track. I'm sorry for the late start, but I agree that was an important conversation to continue from Morning Blend this morning, and I have no problem with that at all. The Texas says, good morning, I like that song, Mix of Yesterday. That's right, that's bringing that new and that old together. That's why I like my boy them. That's why I like Biggity, because they're rooted in that Bahamian culture, but obviously reaching out to the whole world. Listen, it's an exciting day. There's tons of news, but today we're not going to really talk about news. Today I have Mr. Daniel Durazo, the Public Affairs Officer from the U.S. Embassy, joining me to talk about LGBTI pride. And just before I bring him in, we're going to go through some LGBTQIA definitions. I know members of the audience had asked just for a little briefer, and we're going to do that before we get into the show. I got to say two things. It's hot out there. If you got a bucket, figure out how you're going to get some ice. Put your foot in that bucket with some water and some ice. Figure out some high tech. That means low tech. That means not requiring electricity or Anyway, you see how that word required a whole lot of energy to try to pronounce? Yeah, we don't need to be spending a whole lot of energy today. Got to keep it slow, keep it low, keep it cool. That also means keep the temperature down. Keep your temper down. Let's try to breathe on it. Today is a good day to eat your feelings just a little bit. Trust me. People stress out there. They have not acknowledged the extent to which this heat is impacting their psychological, emotional, and mental health as well as their physical health. But I got a quick note before we jump in to the rest of the show. It's the speaker again. I'm standing with the speaker. I mean, I'm not a darkie, so it should be okay, right? But I'm standing with the speaker. I can tell you why. I'm not sure if those are the in the public domain speaking about this matter hear themselves, or even better, if they feel themselves. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you are unaware of the extent to which sexism pervades your thoughts. So when I heard Mr. Branville, when I heard a guest on Beyond the Headlines last night, when I heard a guest referencing something he heard Mr. Branville McCartney say earlier in the show, I almost fell off my chair. First of all, I want to say to that guest on Beyond the Headlines, are you sure that is the rhetoric that you want to be repeating? I can give you a blind because it seems like you were just liking man. But maybe if you had paused for a second to listen to what that gentleman was saying, you wouldn't have felt so eager or easy to repeat it. And to Mr. Branville McCartney, if this is actually what you said, I'm going to ask you politely, respectfully, to please refrain and restrain yourself sometimes and measure your words. And even if you are not concerned about the impact of your words on the people who you are addressing directly, I'll give you that, you are addressing directly, please be concerned and aware of the impact of your words on people who are listening to you and who are also impacted by your words. If what the gentleman who was a guest on Beyond the Headlines said is correct, and you did indeed say that, dear sir, I invite you to sit with some of the country's leading women's rights and human rights organizations to dissect that statement so you can understand just how problematic it is. Yeah. I didn't hear Branville say it myself, but I heard the guest reference it, repeat it, and I thought it was the sort of thing that if it were untrue, if Branville didn't say it, that the host of the show would have asked his guest to retract it. But to be honest, I'm not sure anymore because I'm not sure we are aware of the full scope, right? Like exactly what violence is and how it can operate in a multitude of ways. Please, for years, for decades, Bahamian women and men have been carving out a discourse, a conversation, a public conversation and campaign about violence against women. And in a moment's time, within seconds, with just a reckless utterance, you could destabilize or destroy the tremendous effort and care that people have put into creating a safe environment for women. The political culture will not consume this country. The political class will not run amok and do and say whatever they want without regard to the impact of their actions and their words. First of all, you're hogging up too much of the economy to get away with it. Hogging it up and wasting it. If you were letting people just participate and live and not just trying to be in charge of everything and control of everything and making all the money, but with no real regard for your duty of care or your ethical duty to guide the people who you lead. Last night was a horrible night for women and the vulnerable in this country. See, not every woman is as bigoty and bad and hard-mouthed as the woman you're afraid of. Just because you're afraid of one woman don't mean that all women deserve your wrath, your ire, your disregard, or your contempt. Okay, we're going to put an end to that right there because I got a big day. Now, dear audience members, callers, texters, listen, I didn't mean to take you up on a cliff and like leave you there. It almost felt like that for a moment for me too. But tomorrow, we're going to continue this conversation and a whole bunch of conversations that we need to have. Another text here quickly, Miss Greene. Banks may find themselves with lawsuits because no one... Ooh. Okay, texter. You know what? This is important. He's talking about a potential problem with banks and property documents and the inland revenue process. I got you. I'm going to get into that. Erin, the great human activist, the woman falsely accused police of rape, yet she only got 2 months for messing up lives. What is your idea on that? Oh boy, this is a deep one too. It requires interrogation. Texter, I agree with you. I hadn't planned on it today. I actually hoping to have that conversation over Wednesday and Thursday, if you'd believe it. Stay tuned. Great show as usual in the USA. The heat is at triple digits. And you know, our thermostats, they gonna melt. They can't, we just know it could be triple digits. We can't put them out. We can't be like, we can't use them because they could break because it's too hot. That's like a Bahamian thermostat, yeah. Miss Greene, how could you have the speaker back? You was being sarcastic or you was being serious? And you are one of my favorite talk shows, so I would pretend you ain't say that. All right. Yes, I do have the speakers back. I have critiqued the speaker harshly, over the years. No problem with that. Critiqued her harshly. But yes, I do have her back. See? Because the men in this boys' club, they have each other's back through thick and thin. And the women too, the women have the men's back too, That's why yesterday I let y'all know how I feel about the political culture. But men have men's back. Women have men's back too. Some of these men do the most vile and disgusting things. Not just the politicians, but people in the political class. The most vile and disgusting things. But these men and women will jump up and get their back. Those same men and women, though, those same men and women think the speaker should be lambasted for wringing her neck at them and letting them know that she is there to set a new standard. What they should do is what they admonish young children in school to do, which is mind your business, remember who you are, and follow the rules, because the speaker has the authority in the House, and you have other means to challenge their decision. You're not a 12, 11, 15-year-old child that's still developing and maturing psychologically and mentally, who can get frustrated and trip out, have a tantrum, because their body is not finished completing its wiring. You're not a 14-year-old child that could slip into a tantrum and forget themselves and where they are and the rules. You're a big grown adult that volunteered to lead the country. And the truth is, the speaker should never even ever have to admonish you or ask you to mind yourself. Now the texter, what about countermeasures for when spiteful police officers... I got you. We're going to talk about that, texter. We're going to talk about that. But we have to be serious about interrogating the ways in which we as individuals and collectively perpetuate violence against others, particularly the vulnerable and women. How we participate in it, knowingly and unknowingly, directly and indirectly. And how we too experience these acts. How they render us All of these things we have to take seriously. Because I can tell you this and then we're gone. You want to know why these men are so violent towards women? Because of unprocessed trauma with their mothers. When they were little boys, they are still reconciling with things that they could not control as children and now have to face as adults. That is why. And so I even said to the women, it's up to us to lead the charge, because men always wait for us to lead the charge, and that's okay. That's what we're going to do. All right, producer, let's go to a quick break. Mr. Durazo, we're coming to you when we get back from this break, and we're going to get into this conversation about LGBTI pride in the Bahamas and Global Pride Month and U.S. Pride Month, the month of June, with Mr. Daniel Durazo, the Public Affairs Officer from the U.S. Embassy. Stay tuned to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. You're on the clock with Erin Greene. We'll be right back.
Local paper in Grand Bahama is back every Tuesday as a section of the Nassau Guardian. Available at local stores, gas stations, pharmacies, Western Bakery, and Bellevue Gifts. Daily and, of course, on Tuesdays too. Want to reach your Grand Bahama audience? Then call Barefoot Marketing at 827-4578 or message them for ad rates via their Facebook page. Advertising opportunities now include classified ads too. Keep up with all the latest Grand Bahama news in the Guardian newspaper every Tuesday.
Always on the go? Missed the show? You can now listen to Guardian Radio talk shows anytime, anywhere on Spotify and YouTube by searching Guardian Radio 96.9 FM or by entering the name of your favorite show. You can also listen by logging on to GuardianTalkRadio.com and clicking on the podcast tab. Guardian Radio, continuing to provide you with fresh news and smart talk anywhere, anytime, all day.
A local paper in Grand Bahama is back every Tuesday as a section of the Nassau Guardian. Available at local stores, gas stations, pharmacies, Western Bakery, and Bellevue Gifts. Daily and, of course, on Tuesdays too. Want to reach your Grand Bahama audience? Then call Barefoot Marketing at 827-4578 or message them for ad rates via their Facebook page. Advertising opportunities now include classified ads too. Keep up with all the latest Grand Bahama news in the Guardian newspaper every Tuesday.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Hey, good morning. Welcome back to On the Clock with Erin Greene on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Okay, I've got Mr. Durazo in the Zoom room. Give me 2 seconds. A text there says, I don't have an opinion on the speaker, but is your support for because men support men, or is it based on the speaker being correct? Bias or principle? It is very complicated. A part of it is because I see this grand hypocrisy taking place. Another part of it is, I don't necessarily think she's correct. I think her critique needs to be, it's the wrong word, maybe improve. I think her critique is off, but it's warranted. It's sort of rooted in the right place, and she just needs some help fine lining the critique and understanding the system of governance. But you can't say that she understands it less than the people that go in there all the time and disrespect it. And the question is, do they have the authority? And have they realized what they have caused by their speech and their actions? Do they realize how tenuous this road is that we walk? And how important it is for them to take their duty seriously? Just as it was important for me to explain that to you. Not just because you asked, but because I think a lot of people want to know. Okay. Good morning. Good morning to Mr. Daniel Durazo. How are you?
Good morning, Erin. Good morning. I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me. So June is Pride Month, both in the U.S. and across the globe. A number of countries have adopted June as Pride Month to be a part of a global movement. And I think June was chosen as Pride Month because of the Stonewall riots, which would have taken place at the end of June. It was a series of riots that began at the end of June and transitioned into July, took place in July as well, and June was chosen for LGBTI Pride Month. In earlier iterations of Bahamian Pride, we would have celebrated Pride, I think, in June as well, or July, maybe a little later in the year. But today, local LGBTI organizations have begun celebrating Pride in October that aligns with National Heroes Month, in an attempt to create a greater inclusion for the community and a greater sense of solidarity and acceptance for the wider community, and I think that's why we've done it. But I want to start off the discussion by asking you, what does LGBTI Pride mean to the U.S. government and to the State Department specifically, I guess?
Thank you, Erin. I think ultimately what LGBTQI Pride Month means to the U.S. government is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to recognize the resilience and the determination of all of the individuals who are fighting to live their lives freely and authentically. And I think for us here in the Bahamas and for embassies around the world as part of the State Department, it's an opportunity to show our support for a community that challenges around the world, certainly in the Bahamas, and a chance to state clearly that we believe that everyone has the right to live their lives without fear of discrimination, regardless of who they are and who they love.
Absolutely. And how is, so this is the second annual flag raising event.
Yep.
Hosted by the U.S. Embassy. How is raising the LGBTI flag a symbol of LGBTI pride and solidarity with the community?
Sure. So the story behind the flag itself is an interesting one. Harvey Milk, who's the first openly gay elected public official in the United States, and we actually watched a film about him last week. Thank you for joining us for that, Erin.
Thank you.
He challenged a friend of his who was a retired Army officer, a friend of his named Gilbert Baker, to design a symbol that represented the diversity of the gay movement in the 1960s and 1970s. Mm-hmm. And the rainbow flag has undergone a few redesigns since then, but retains sort of its original symbolism of being a flag that represents diversity and is a symbol for the gay, for the LGBTQI community in that way. Mm-hmm. And in terms of its meaning to the U.S. government, I think that in flying the pride flag in 100 and plus embassies around the world is sort of trying to recognize that diversity as well, and the diversity of the LGBTQI plus community itself, and also the diversity of communities around the world. I think that communities are always more diverse than they may seem on the surface, and flying that flag is a way to acknowledge that part of this community and an opportunity to advance the human rights of a community that has had unique struggles and that has made some progress in some parts of the world, and there's still a long way to go in many others.
When we watched the film Milk, that was the first time watching it. And I had sort of avoided it because, it seemed like, another movie about politicians. And I knew it. But it's a fantastically heartwarming movie. But the flag story, right? When you watch the movie and at the infancy of sort of the movement, the public movement, a lot of momentum was gained once Milk was able to bring in other sectors of the community together, to work together. So once he had brought on a lesbian campaign manager, right? But more importantly, once he had convinced the male members of his working group to open up the space to a woman, that's when the campaign began to gain a tremendous momentum. And so the idea of reflecting that diversity and the power of when all of these sectors come together, I mean, it's just poignant, you know. And so I can understand a simple act like raising the flag being a powerful of advocacy and of solidarity.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned something interesting about that film. Certainly it's about, politics, it's about a movement, but it's also really personal. And it kind of shows how, I think oftentimes, especially to people kind of outside of the community, you hear a term like LGBTQI plus, or however you choose to use the acronym, which just in case anybody listening is curious, stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex. And people hear that term and they imagine perhaps sort of a monolithic community where everybody is all the same and everybody agrees and everybody's on the same page. And certainly that can happen. There can be that kind of unity. But the LGBTQI community, just like any other community, is also one that's filled with human beings who don't always agree on everything and who have, I think, part of what that film showed was that evolution of that community and kind of their own sort of struggle to embrace diversity internally. And that's why I think the Pride flag, even though it certainly is a statement in support of that particular community in a lot of ways, it is also just a statement in support of diversity and human rights and equality and justice in general, and of encouraging people to see each other as human being first and as whatever other labels they have second, and to recognize that we're all similar in some fundamental ways.
And if we as a wider community can acknowledge and perhaps implement some of the lessons or solutions derived from the struggles of LGBTI people, then we will see that our communities and our country will be stronger if we can also weave ourselves together like the LGBT community has had to in order to protect itself.
I think so. I think ultimately I think you stated it really beautifully. That's part of what we're hoping to support. And flying the flag publicly from the embassy building itself and from the official ambassador's residence is kind of a way, for me at least, just kind of on the meaning of flying that flag to me, is it's a way to say openly and to sort of, encourage others who might also support the community but might not feel comfortable doing it openly, showing them that it is possible to do. And even if some people disagree with you or some people are upset, it's a powerful statement, it's a useful statement, and it's also something that more people than perhaps you might imagine will also support and will be appreciative of. I can't tell you, I think one of the things that has encouraged me the most over the past year that we've been doing this since Pride Month last year is how many people, both lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex people who identify with that community, as well as heterosexual, cisgendered people who maybe have a friend or a family member who happens to be lesbian or gay or bisexual, or perhaps somebody who just is sort of supportive of the community for other reasons, have come up to me and said to me, I'm really happy that the embassy and talked about the issue. I think it's important. And that's encouraging because it reminds me that just like the LGBTQI plus community isn't monolithic, Bahamian society isn't monolithic either. And there's a diversity of views inside the community. And to me, it's important to kind of provide the space for all of those voices to be heard and to come together and hopefully, find common ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, I'm working on a new comedy routine because, we are not a monolith. We're very diverse, and you'd be surprised of, what you find in the community. People would be surprised that conservative LGBTI people can be more conservative than the most conservative church person you ever met.
Yeah, that's true.
And I find that, fascinating and true in Bahamian society where, and people in the community know it, and people who know gay people know it as well. So let's get to the Pride activities for Pride Month. What activities have the U.S. Embassy and its partners hosted so far for Pride Month?
So far, we, at the very beginning of the month, just before the beginning of the month, I should say, on the evening of May 31st, Virgin Voyages, their cruise ship based out of Florida called the Scarlet Lady, lit up in rainbow colors as it was departing Bimini to kind of kick off the month. That was something, Virgin Voyages has talked very openly about how they are an ally and an advocate for that community. And they were sort of, they were happy to be a part of kicking off the month that way. We also celebrated a Pride happy hour last week at Bon Vivant, which was also it was encouraging, again, to see that, Bon Vivant was full that evening, at least when I showed up, and one of the busiest that I've ever seen it. And it shows, I think, that there are quite a few people in the Bahamas who are supportive of the community and who are perfectly comfortable sharing that safe space with them. So we were really happy to be a part of that last week. And last week, as you know, since you were kind enough to join us, we watched a movie at the National Art Gallery of the Bahamas. We watched that movie about Harvey Milk, which was really, really moving and really informative. And then over the weekend, I wasn't able to go myself, unfortunately, but the Turin Gallery, which is hosting a couple of exhibitions from artists who sort of speak to some of the issues in the LGBTQI plus community. They also hosted Bamford Spa, who was doing nails for their guests on Saturday. And I did happen to go by the Island House over the weekend and saw that they also have a rainbow flag hanging in their window. And seeing that has also been encouraging, seeing a few more kind of open symbols of support. Sherwin Williams has also posted on social media with a few Pride messages. And I really do think that just the more people who can kind of speak openly about it, the more normal that conversation will become, the more comfortable people will become just talking about it and figuring out, how they feel and what equal rights for the LGBTQI plus community will look like in the Bahamas.
Now, Daniel, I have a text here. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, right? But it says, Miss Greene, say, great show as usual, but, and he said, don't get mad at me, but tell me, how could the LGBTI community take a whole month? Like, why do you all need a whole month out of the year? And he says, Christmas only get one day, Easter only get one day, my birthday only get one day. And then, I had another audience, another social media user say, Men's Mental Health Month, only gets 1 month a year, and they have to share it with LGBTI community. And it developed, a great conversation came out of that space. But, sure. Let's see, why a whole month, right? Why not just like a day of remembrance for LGBTI people? Why is it important?
I think ultimately, to me, and I've had this conversation a couple of times and learned a lot along the way. And ultimately, I think where I've arrived is, I think the issue of LGBTQI plus equality in the Bahamas, at least from the embassy's point of view here, that is one of the issues where we can be most helpful and most useful, and where there is sort of a void or a gap, let's say, of large institutions that sort of have, some legitimacy here in the country, speaking openly and comfortably about that issue. And, the embassy has limited time and energy and resources. We have to prioritize sort of where we focus our attention. And we try and focus as much attention as we can in the places where we think that we can help the most, can do the most good. And LGBTQI issues is one of those areas. And I think that's why we do focus as much attention on it as we do month of June. And frankly, we're trying to focus more attention on it throughout the year as well, to not sort of just have it be something that happens during June, but to continue to support the community in other ways, perhaps less visible ways, but nonetheless important ways throughout the month. And I'll also say that, the embassy certainly does a much greater diversity of activities in the Bahamas other than just Pride Month. Throughout the year, we are working on disaster preparedness. We're working on supporting the law enforcement, effectiveness of law enforcement in the Bahamas. We're working on human rights issues. We're working on helping the Bahamas in the fight against climate change and to support environmental education. Certainly, the embassy operates its visa operations all year. So the embassy does a lot. And I think that during Pride Month, it might seem like that's all we're doing, but that's certainly not the case. And I'm happy that Pride is a big part of what we do, but it's certainly not the only thing. And I will also, in the spirit of tongue in cheek, I will challenge the caller about the fact that Christmas is just one day, because it certainly doesn't feel like it. I start hearing Christmas music and seeing Christmas decorations as early as November sometimes. So Christmas certainly gets a lot of attention, and that's fair enough. And that may be more for some and not so much for others, but
anyway,
that's okay too.
Daniel, I can write the U.S. Embassy a petition, because Christmas is supposed to be 12 days, and in some countries you get a gift. Even government needs some encouragement to engage in some global foreign policy, right, to align us with the rest of the world. But not just that.
I'll see what I can do.
That when you're big, you sometimes you don't remember what it's like to be small. When you're the dominant culture, sometimes you don't know what it's like to not be the dominant culture.
I think that's true, and I think that's a really good point. I think that's another reason why sort of Pride Month is celebrated kind of very, very strongly, and a whole month is sort of part of that commemoration of the Stonewall riots. Is I think you're absolutely right. It's because despite the progress that has been made, and there has been a lot of progress in many parts of the world, the United States included. The U.S. of 2022 is certainly not the U.S. of the 1980s, either legally or culturally. But nonetheless, there are many parts of the world and some parts of the United States where the LGBTQI community, like you said, is not certainly the dominant part of the culture, and is discriminated in a variety of ways. And I think that it's useful to observe that and to be as vocal and supportive of the community as we can when we have the opportunity. And June is an opportunity to do that.
So I got a text here I want to read. Now, audience, brace yourself. The text says, everyone has a right to live their lives as a, quote, human being. Special rights, quote, is not innate. This Gay Pride Month, American or otherwise, is utter foolishness and repulsive to most Bahamians. Take it elsewhere. So I just want to respond to that to say that although we talk about LGBT rights or LGBTQIA rights, we're not talking about a specific or special set of rights for LGBTI people. What we're saying, it's a shortened version of LGBTI people to have and deserve access to human rights that every other person has access. For special rights, we're asking for access to the rights that everybody else has access to.
That's absolutely right. And I think several U.S. officials have said it in this way, and not just about LGBTQI plus rights, but about other movements as well, about women's rights in particular, which is that, LGBTQI plus rights are human rights, and women's rights are human rights. And like you say, it's not about granting special protections or special rights or special access to any particular community, but rather elevating that community to the same level of service, equality, dignity, respect as the dominant group, which in many societies for many centuries, if not longer, has been heterosexual males. And it's about establishing that sense of equality. and not about elevating them above the other groups and making them the dominant group, but ensuring that everybody has equal access and equal justice.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to drink some gentle juice right now and read some of these texts. I have a text here that says,
Sure.
"Good afternoon. Why do this? I'm a gentleman. Want to..." Oh, okay. Why does the gentleman want to force his lifestyle on us? First of all, in the conversation today, texter, I am the gay person and not my guest. That's it. Second of all, it's not a lifestyle. My lifestyle is going in my yard and cussing raccoons for eating all my mango and dilly, swatting mosquitoes for 4 hours a day, and wondering if my power is going to stay on for the rest of the night. That is my lifestyle. I ain't trying to share that with nobody, and ain't nobody trying to catch that, sir. Another quick text. Great show as usual. I am sorry I missed that text. There's a texter here that's very mad at me. Okay, good morning, Erin. The embassy's stance and belief in pushing the LGBT agenda is not welcome by most Bahamians. Without the natural way for humans come into the world, can same-sex union. You know what? In the Bahamas, the majority of children are not being born through marriage relationships. Let's not suggest that it's the marriage, right? Like it has to be done in a marriage. Let's just pause for a second. I need to drink my gentle juice. I don't want you texted to think I'm being rude or I try and embarrass you. I'm not. I'm just saying, remember that the vast majority of births in the Bahamas don't come through marriage, heterosexual marriage anyway. So let's start there. Text says,
and Erin, I wanted to also respond to one of the other questions that you read a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
One is just to clarify that I am not a member of the LGBTQI plus community myself. I'm a heterosexual cisgendered male, happily married to my wife, and that doesn't mean that I can't still support the LGBTQI plus community. I think that's often a misconception that is prevalent not just in the Bahamas but in other places, which is that, and I find that this is a particular stigma against men oftentimes, where if you're a man and you speak out in support of the gay community or the LGBTQI plus community, somehow there's suspicion, and certainly there would be nothing wrong with that even if it was true. But I do think it's important to recognize that we don't have to be the same in order to support each other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be gay in order to support gay rights. I don't have to be a woman in order to support women's rights. I don't have to be a migrant or a Black person to support the rights of Black people in the United States, or to support the rights of migrants who are seeking asylum or refugees who are seeking asylum in another country. We can be different, and we can come from our own individual perspectives and still find a reason to support one another. And I just kind of wanted to take advantage of the confusion on behalf of the earlier caller to clarify that. And also just to thank you, Erin, for having me be a part of this conversation and to talk to you about this. I'm really enjoying the conversation so far, and just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, man. It's been great. It's been great. I got another text here. We're going to read before the show. The text says, Erin, I identify as a unicorn. Do I now have rights? Why are we creating rights for people who identify as this and that? Do I have unicorn rights? Okay, texter, let's talk about it. So first of all, you identify as a unicorn. That is fine. That's great. You can identify as a unicorn. Can you perform magic with your horn? You can. That's great. You can't. That's okay. You could still be a unicorn if you can't perform magic with your horn. You have the right to identify as a unicorn. Do you have the right to demand a special bathroom for unicorns? Not necessarily. What you could do, though, is you could demand a standalone unisex bathroom so that anybody could go into that bathroom by themselves. Right? It don't have to be a male bathroom, a woman bathroom, a unicorn bathroom. It won't matter because the person in the bathroom will be the only person in the bathroom. You do have the right to identify as a unicorn. You have to be treated as you identify as a unicorn. You have the right to be treated with dignity and respect, even though you identify as a unicorn. Now, you may identify as a unicorn, but you must acknowledge that you have the physiological structure of a human, and you may be required to wear human clothes when you're on these roads. But nobody could ridicule you, disrespect you, or tell you that you are less of a being because you identify as a unicorn. And even if you identify as a unicorn, if somebody does harm to you, you could go to the police and say, look here, I identify as a unicorn. These people was making fun of me and they attacked me. And the police got to bite their tongue, hold their laughter, act as professionals, and treat you with dignity. Because you have the right to self-identification. And that's just
I was just going to say that particular argument is I think one that has been commonly used against minority groups, which is to sort of take the argument of recognizing the equal rights of a particular group and taking that argument to sort of some other extreme conclusion potentially, or sort of more unusual conclusion, as a way to say that granting rights or recognizing the equal rights of a community like the LGBTQI community is somehow a slippery slope, right? That if we grant equal rights to people who identify as LGBTQI plus, then we have to grant equal rights to people who identify as, in the case of this gentleman, a unicorn, or who perhaps belong to some other group that may or may not exist. And I think the difference is ultimately that the LGBTQI plus community is one that is not, causing harm to anyone. They're simply trying to live their own lives freely. And B is a community significant and largely recognized and that has kind of common interests and that exist as a meaningful part of society. It's not just one individual saying, well, I believe this, so I should be recognized in my equal rights for this, that, or the other. It's an entire community of people who have all found common cause and who are recognized in many parts of the world as being a distinct social group. That's part of how, for example, the United States is able to admit LGBTQI persons as asylum seekers when they are refugees, is because they're recognized as a distinct social group who faces very particular and common kinds of discrimination and persecution in many parts of the world. So it's sort of a bit of a false equivalency, although I really respect what you said and really admire you for, what did you call it? Taking some gentle juice? Yeah. But I do think it's sort of a bit of a false equivalency to say, well, an LGBTQI plus person that says I identify as homosexual or as transgender or whichever identity they may choose, is the same as somebody saying, well, I believe in flying spaghetti monsters, or I'm a unicorn, or any other sort of individual belief that somebody might have, which is also valid and certainly worthy of being listened to and respected. But I do think that whether we're talking about women, whether we're talking about a racial or ethnic minority, or we're talking in this case about LGBTQI plus persons, where the sort of the common aspect has to do with sexual preference or gender identity, that is a particular case, and there's a lot of precedent for recognizing the equal rights of those groups as well.
Daniel, I'm going to beg you to come back on before the end of the month, because I got like 6 questions here we didn't get to. And that's my fault, not Dwight's fault, not the speaker's fault. It's not the LGBTI in me fault either. It's my fault. I can take responsibility for that. I am all out of time, Mr. Daniel Durazo. Thank you so much for joining me from the U.S. Embassy. I want to let you sign off before I say this. I know I'm all out of time, but imagine if I decided I could just discriminate or be disgusting to somebody because they believed they were a politician, or worse yet, they believed that they were a good politician. We just got to figure out where we are in this whole big soup called life, gain some perspective, and remember that there's no one in this part that is greater than the other. Also, just a quick note before we go. Listen, there's a young journalist that's reached out to me. They're looking for elder members of the LGBTI community to participate in a project documenting LGBTI people across the globe. So you can contact me, Erin Greene, at 428-0719. That's 428-0719 to learn more about this project, to see if you can participate. But don't take too long, because the deadline is in a couple of days. That's 428-0719. Text us from the earlier portion of the show. I'm going to get back to you tomorrow. Papa, I ain't forget you. And for the rest of y'all, I'm going to give you these LGBTQIA definitions, so when you hating, at least you hating with some context and some sense, eh? Anyway, have a great day. Thank you, producer. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, texters. And I'm sorry to the callers, I couldn't get to the calls today. Have a great day. And of course, I stand with women who experience violence.
Finance, no chance, not a dollar towards the grant. Come like everyone want me down. What a politician plan, only here my girl want. Must see ambulance, she down like that.